My name, for those of you who don't know, my name's Ryan, one of the pastors here, actually for just one more month. Are you clapping that I'm leaving? Come on now. But here's what we're doing. Westgate is launching their first church plant, our first church plant, September 9th. And now you can clap for that. That would be appropriate. And as we're doing that, we're really getting excited. We've seen God do so many amazing things. And I just wanted to give you a quick update on it. We've talked a lot about these house churches. This last week, we launched those officially. We had over 275 people join in 7 different locations that met midweek this week. We've had a lot of questions on that from those going, hey, what are house churches? And they're really not, because since we didn't have a location, like, are you just doing that since you don't have a location yet? No, it's really the way we want to do community. We long for there to be pockets of community all around in different, whether it's Willow Glen, Rose Garden, Los Gatos, wherever, Campbell, and you just go, these pockets of community gathering together where you actually get to know more than just 4 or 5. You get to know about 30 people and do life together, do church. I mean, ours was so fun. We met and had a potluck, we're hanging out, and went through a study. We worshiped together. There's something awesome about worshiping just in a little, with acoustic guitar together. And then we're dreaming about how not just doing community, but how these communities can impact their community. See, church is really not about this moment here. This is just the celebration of what church has been doing all throughout the week, right? Because you're the church. Don't miss that. This is just the gathering of us coming together, celebrating what God is doing. But the church is always on the move because wherever you go, church is going. And we wanted to make sure and do that. So we've launched these house churches, and it's been awesome. But we did find a location, which is exciting. And so, yeah, that's a huge answer to prayer. And so we have a little bit of a temporary place where maybe a year or two, but we're going to meet at Del Mar High School. And they have a... I'm glad you approve. But one of the amazing things is just they built a brand new theater a year ago. It's right at the front of their campus. So as you pull in there, there's tons of parking and then this beautiful theater. And we're going to be able to meet there for as long as we need. And we're looking and meeting with some people about long-term places where we're at. Last week, you got to hear Jay Kim as well, yeah? And I keep telling you, I am amazed at the people that God is bringing to be a part of this. And I mean, Jay is just an awesome add to what he's doing. I mean, great preacher, great leader, great worship leader, kind of that triple threat and an awesome teammate to be a part of doing this. And we were just watching God bring people on to accomplish his vision and his goal for this generation. So that's kind of a little update with what's going on. Wanted to keep you in the loop because you're a part of this. Even if you're going with us, what you need to know is the DNA of who Westgate is and what we are as a community is being transplanted throughout this city. We're launching new churches. When you give here, it not only does stuff for Westgate here, we give tons of money outside our walls around the world, and it is launching what we're doing in the community. And so I just want to say thank you. It's great to be a part of that type of community where we see God at work and where we're just coming together and seeing him do things that are way bigger than we could ever dream. So it's a joy to get to team up with you, formally and informally. So let me pray, and we will dive in. Jesus, I invite you here. Need you to show up. Ask that you would work and you would move. You would break down the barriers in our heart. And you would speak with great clarity to our souls. We are desperate for you. And in that moment, would you allow us to respond to your prompting and move towards you? In Jesus' name, amen. We are finishing up a series called Stuck in a Tree. It's a 4-part series we've been closing out this morning. And we started this whole series with saying there's a certain age, often when you're very young, that you shift from being fearful, or fearless that is, to being fearful, that you have this major shift. And the minute that happens, and it happens at different ages for us, but the minute that happens, you're now constantly confronted with this choice. Will I choose to be paralyzed by fear, or will I be propelled by faith? Will I choose to be stuck, paralyzed by fear, where I can't move forward in that relationship? Will I choose to be paralyzed? And you realize it is a choice with that habit, that addiction, that thought pattern. Or will I be propelled by faith? And faith is not a foreign concept, though sometimes it gets mixed up in the religious jargon. Faith is just everyday life. Every action you take once you roll out of bed is an act of faith. We all act in faith in something or someone. The question is, what is your faith in? I mean, just getting here, I've used this example, was a courageous act of faith. You got into a huge metal box and decided to catapult it down the road at lightning fast speeds. You chose to pour combustible liquid in it. And then underneath the hood are many explosions taking place. And we just take that for common day, everyday occurrence. I got in my car and I drove. And yet, it's a courageous act of faith, wasn't it, when you really think about it? And you're trusting all the people around you have enough sanity to not collide into you either. See, but you have this choice, whether to be paralyzed by fear or propelled by faith. The title of this series really came from a moment I had with my daughter a few months back, 7 years old. And if you've been around, you've heard this story of where she was crying in the backyard. I heard her screaming, and I come out, and she had climbed up to the point where she didn't know how to get back down. And she was stuck, literally, in a tree. And many of us don't really climb trees anymore, but we find ourselves too often stuck, don't we? We don't get stuck necessarily in a tree, but we get stuck longing for people's approval. We get stuck with that reaction that we just seem to not get under control, that anger, that jealousy. We get stuck. Maybe it's with your mate, and you're just stuck in a cycle that keeps spiraling down. Maybe it's with your kids, and you just feel stuck, and you don't know what to do. And we said this: when stuck in a tree, your focus determines everything. That what you're focused on will become the filter or the lens in which you view all of life. Ella's stuck in the tree. She's clinging, shaking. And what was so fascinating to me, from my perspective, I'm standing underneath her, able to touch her toes. But her focus was on her fear around her, that she couldn't move forward. It was the way she interpreted her circumstances in all of life. She couldn't see her Father below her, who had the ability to hold her. See, when stuck in a tree, your focus determines everything. And then we went on to say, when stuck in a tree, risk is your only option. That at some point, you have to risk your present circumstance for a preferable future. You have to risk whether you're going to stay stuck or trust, faith, be propelled by faith. But either option is risky. So don't think just staying here comfortable is not risky. You risk staying stuck. You risk having that relationship just constantly deteriorate. And then here's where we want to close. And this has really been the undercurrent of the entire series. In fact, this is really nothing new. I simply want to remind you of something you already know. And maybe, just maybe, help us apply it in an area that we don't often apply it. When stuck in a tree, your decisions direct your destination. When stuck in a tree, your decisions, not your good intentions. Your decisions, not your desires. Your decisions, not your longings, direct your destination, where you're going to land. See, you get to choose. In fact, the most spiritual act you have is the ability to choose. God has given you that. Well, let me give you an illustration, because you're like, how's this tying in? A number of years ago, I had a car that began to make a noise. Kind of like this. And so as I drove this car, and this was back in Georgia, I drove it around, it made a louder noise to the point that when I would drive through the neighborhood, I was embarrassed. People would come out of their house to see this vehicle driving through their neighborhood. But here was my response, illogical as it seems. I know nothing about cars. I heard that noise. I said, I'm not sure what that is. It could be a belt. It could be something else. I have no clue. I hope it gets better. Maybe it will go away. I drove it for a month or so with that. I'm like, okay. Sometimes it didn't make that noise. I'm like, hey, there you go. It fixed itself. At one point even, I was like, you know what? I really need to take this in. I even went as far as praying about it. God, would you fix my car? Not too long later, my car seized up. I take it in, and they said, sorry, the engine's ruined. You have to replace the whole engine. See, when stuck in a tree, your decisions determine your destination, not your good intentions. And we do that all the time, especially in the areas where we're stuck, don't we? In that relationship, rather than dealing with it, we just kind of go, I hope things get better. Hey, I meant well. Isn't that enough? With that addiction, you go, well, you know what? Maybe it will just go away. And then we sit back and we wonder, why am I still stuck? We already get it. We know this. We understand this, that your decisions direct your destination. But somehow there's this gap, this miss, where we don't apply it into some of the most crucial areas of life. See, it's not your intention. It's not your desires. It is, what do you decide to do? So if that's true, let's spend the remainder of our time just talking about 3 areas that really direct our decisions. 3 areas that influence why we make the decisions that we make. In fact, we're going to study the life of Moses and out of here, Hebrews 11. And what was so fascinating to me was over and over, what you'll notice is you'll see these action words about what he chose. But I think it's really important if it is that big of a deal, your decisions, not intentions, direct your destination, where you're going to land, where you're going to end up. Then let's take a step further and go, okay, what is influencing my decisions? 3 areas that determine and direct your decisions. The first area is your identity. Your identity. And the question here is, what is it that defines you? It's the fundamental question that you've asked, probably beginning in junior high. Who am I? How do I fit in? What is your identity? In fact, we place our identity in all sorts of things, don't we? We think this is who I am, and some of us, who we are is that we're a doer. We just do things. We have to accomplish things. We have to achieve things. If we're not successful, then we don't know who we are. And you're the type A person that's going, got to get stuff done, get it onward and upward. And you keep going through that cycle, and yet there's this undercurrent in your soul if you're just like, I'm tired. And I keep doing this, but it doesn't satisfy me fully. And then some of us, our identity is just simply pleasers, isn't it? We just long to please people. We seek others' approval. These are great people to be around, by the way, because doers are not very fun to be around sometimes because they might drive through you to get stuff done. And you're like, well, I want them on my team at work, but you know what? I may not want you as a friend, but then pleasers, my gosh, whoo. They're great because they make you feel awesome because their whole identity is wrapped up in making you feel awesome. If you can make you feel awesome and make you happy, and they keep peace at all costs, and yet there is this crying of the soul of, does somebody even care about me? And then maybe there's the blamers. Your identity's built on shifting the blame onto others or just living out this constant dialogue of the soul of I'm not good enough, I'll never measure up, I'm unworthy. And these are those who embrace an identity sometimes as the victim. Now, don't get me wrong. There are many in this room who got stuck in a tree because someone did something to you. But you have the choice whether you'll stay stuck or not. See, your identity is not being a victim. And yet some of us take that on and we begin to live that story out. Notice Moses. Because he was conflicted with his identity. The backstory on Moses was he grew up in a slave family and yet became part of the royal family in Egypt. And he had this conflicted identity of do I identify with the people of God and my heritage, or do I simply go along with what the world around me is saying that I am? Isn't that where we get our identity a lot of times? Is what other people say that we are, other people declare that we are, and then all of a sudden we just simply begin to embrace that as true of ourselves. Listen to what it says about Moses. It says, by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, I love this word, just circle it, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, because that was not his true identity. See, the question for you and I is what will you refuse to be known as? There is stuff that is directing your decisions based on who you believe you are that is not true of you. Now, for those who are followers of Christ, check this out. God has said, I long to give you a brand new identity. Not based on anything you've done, but based on what I've done. I mean, the Bible talks about this over and over, that when you enter the family of God, he says, I adopt you. What a great analogy, reality, that you're adopted into the family of God. That means you're given a new name. You're given a new standing and rights. That the God of the universe, though the internal narrative of your soul says, I'm not worthy, he says, you are worthy because of Jesus. Though the internal narrative of your soul says, I am unlovable and unlovely, he says, you are fully loved. You are my beloved. You sit and you wrestle with your value and whether you're of any value. He says, guess what? You know how valuable you are? I sent my son to die on a cross so that I could be in relationship with you. That's how valuable you are. There's no expense that I would go for you. See, isn't it time for you to refuse to be known as something you're not, where you'd begin to embrace what God has already declared to be true of you. Now, let me say this. This is hard work. This is a choice that you constantly have to make. I love what the psalmist says, Psalm 15, too, and it's talking about he who dwells on God's holy hill, and it gives this list of that type of man and woman. It says, he who speaks truth in his heart. See, the way to do this is you have to be a truth speaker in your heart. You have to get back in when those thoughts of who you are, you're going, I'll never measure up. Those thoughts of what that person said about you, you're a failure, said, no. It's where you just start preaching to yourself. And some of you just need to have a list. I am adopted, son or daughter of the King. I am beloved. I am forgiven at this moment fully. I have been made whole. I am redeemed and restored. Many of us say this, well, I'm just a sinner. That is not true. Your identity in Christ is he's declared you holy. You are a saint. Whether you will embrace that or not is one thing, but the truth and the reality of who God says you are, he says you are a saint. Isn't it time that you refuse to be known as something you're not? See, and this is why it's so important. Your decisions direct your destination. And so oftentimes what informs our decision is who we believe we are, doesn't it? And we begin to live out a story based on who we think we are instead of who God has declared us to be. The second area that informs our decision is our value. Our value. What you value. And the question here is, what won't you compromise? What is it that you say, I will not live without? Where you go, these are the things that you go, hey, this is valuable and of worth to me. I won't give it up. And so oftentimes, isn't it funny, the things that we value, the things that we won't compromise, give us such a poor return? We often won't compromise our own comfort, right? Our own security. At the end of the day, the things that you say you won't compromise with your family. And yet with your work, you go, what I value most is whatever the boss says. I value more what people think of me. And we begin to make decisions. Isn't it amazing that the people that we admire make some of the most difficult decisions based on their conviction? And yet we just kind of sit back and go, okay, let's just kind of go through the motions. Notice what Moses did here, verse 25. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a short time. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as greater value than the treasures of Egypt because he was looking ahead to his reward. See, the choice is, will I live out my convictions or simply out of my comfort? At the end of the day, when you go, what do I value most? Is it a life of integrity or a life of comfort? These two aren't compatible. We often in the American value most safety. And yet the cry of our soul is for significance, isn't it? That we just simply go through the motions and the choices we make are based on the values we have, and yet they're leading us down a road where it's hollow and it's empty, and we realize that our values are leading us to a place we don't long to be, and it's leading to become a people we don't long to become, isn't it? And we settle for far too little and never really live. And the choice is, will I live out my convictions or simply out of my comfort? And what's amazing is what will begin to inform your convictions is perhaps one of the greatest things that Christianity offers to a hurting and broken world. You want to be that person where you go, I want to live out a life that has significance. And we all do. We all realize that life is short. And yet we just get caught up in doing the same thing over and over. And then the message of God is saying, I come. And guess what? I want to bring purpose to you. Rather than just simply going through the motions, because I think a lot of us are simply sleepwalking through life. Never truly living, and just where we're stuck is just, this is just the way life is. My purpose is just simply to get as much as I can, simply eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we'll die. It's pretty empty, it's pretty shallow, but what else is there? And then the God of the universe says, I invite you to give your life towards something that's eternal. That it just makes sense that if there is a God in the universe that created you, then you're designed to, one, know the one who created you and make him known. And in purpose, we just simply ask this question: what will you give your life to? What are you giving your life to? We rarely ask this, though. Is what I'm giving my life to worth dying for? See, the things we live for a lot of times isn't worth dying for. So you should really ask, is it worth living for at all? And you know what purpose does? It gives you clarity. It gives you direction. When you embrace your purpose, then you will begin to live out a life of conviction. See, Moses was clear on his calling. Check it out. It says, by faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. I just love that. That the most powerful man on the planet is opposing him. And yet he is so clear on his calling that what's standing before him, he says, I can go through that because I'm called to something greater. I saw him who is invisible. I will march forward. And here's the thing that will knock us either way, whether we'll live out a life of purpose, significance, of calling. Will I choose to honor God or honor man? It has to be settled in our soul. Will I choose to respond to the invitation of God and to the story of God? That if he created all things, then his way is the best, and that he is good and for me. And the deep longing of my soul, the emptiness that I keep trying to fill with everything else, can only be filled by the one who created me. And so then I'll live out the rest of my days just simply for him. Or will I just continue to do what I'm doing? Going through the motion. I just asked the question, how's it working for you? I mean, honestly, how's it working for you? I know you're staying busy so you don't have to really listen to the longing of your soul. But that quiet moment before you drift off to sleep, what's going on inside? And you have to choose. Will I honor God or honor man? Your direction and your decisions direct your destination. It reminds me We were at a garage sale and came across the Choose Your Own Adventure books. You remember these? Aren't they great? I used to love these. Why? Because you had a choice to make. You came across a point, and then it said, your choice is, if you decide to attend the Space Academy, turn to page 19. If you choose to explore the knowledge within yourself, turn to page 20. I'm like, okay, that's weird. But, but there is this hey, all of a sudden you realize, I am part of the story, and what I choose matters. The decisions I make direct the end of the story. And this is the question I would simply ask is, what story do you want your life to tell? At the end of the day, looking back, what is the story you want your life to tell? One of conviction, of courage, of a woman who walked by faith, saw God work, or just simply, I lived these years and existed. I love what it says on the back. It says, beware and warning. This book is different from other books. You and you alone are in charge of what happens in this story. And it says there are dangers, choices, adventures, and consequences. And this is written to 8-year-olds, And it says you must use all of your numerous talents and much of your enormous intelligence. The wrong decision could end in disaster, even death. Wow. But could it be that many of us feel that way right now? That we get that your decisions direct your destination. And you said, Ingram, the story of my life is already written. The ending's already finished. You don't know what I've done, where I've been, the life I've wasted. I've just got a few short years. And I have to just tell you, I love how it ends here. But don't despair. At any time, you can go back and make another choice, alter the path of your story, and change its result. Wouldn't that be awesome? If you could do that, just think through the catalog of your life and go, what choices would you change? And, it might have been all of high school. You can't do that. But you have a God who is inviting you into his story. Who says the ending, no matter where you're at and what decisions you made, is not yet written. You have a God who specializes on redeeming broken stories and restoring hurting people. And so just like the Choose Your Own Adventure, you have a decision to make. Will you step into the story of God? For some, that's just a fresh awakening of going, I'm ready to walk with God again. I've been going through the motions, and God, I choose you. Isn't that amazing that we can choose the God who's already chosen us? That he's already chosen you, extending his grace towards you, and it's just a simple response of, I choose you back. And there's some this morning who have never, ever had a relationship with the God of the universe, who've never chosen him. And this morning, I'd invite you into his story. He's writing a grand story for your life, full of purpose and meaning and value. He's given you a new identity. If you'll just simply step in and say, Jesus, I need you. I'm tired of doing it my own way. Will you come into my life? I believe you came and died on the cross for all the brokenness and sin of my life and rose again on the third day, declaring power and defeat over sin and death. I need you. I choose a different story. And if you're here in this place and you've never made a decision to follow Jesus, to experience the grace extended to you, experience hope, peace, life, finally life. That's what John meant when he said, he's quoting Jesus, to give you life and life to the full. It wasn't just that you would experience heaven later, it's that you would experience heaven now. And if you'd like to step into that story, I'd like to give you the opportunity, just in your seat, to have a conversation with God and invite him into your life. And so as they just simply bring the lights down, I'd invite you to pray after me. A simple prayer. Jesus, I'm stuck. And I can't do this on my own. I need help. I'm tired of doing life my way. It's not working. Would you come into my life and make me new? I believe you are the Son of God, sent to save me. I long to have a relationship with you. Will you come and make me new? I want to live out your story from this day forward. And I just say, if kind of with eyes closed, I want to be able to pray for you. If you prayed that prayer and you stepped into the story of God relationship, would you just raise your hand for me? No one's looking around. I just want to see it. Amen. 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 Keep them high. I can't. Amen. God, I pray for these men and women who have stepped into the amazing story you've written them with a new identity, a new purpose and calling. That they would be overwhelmed in this moment by your great love for them. They would experience you deeply. And that you would use them to express your love to this world. In Jesus' name.